Like a lot of activists in Eugene, I do a lot of different things because there's a lot to get done and apparently not enough people doing it as of yet. So I bounce around. But one of the things that a new hat I've just put on with my good friends Ali Valkyrie and Dustin Meny is as the founders of the Nightingale Public Advocacy Collective, which will be continuing the work we've been doing for the last year and a half, representing the rights of the homeless against Jim Crow-style bigotry organized by the local businesses, police, and government for the various interests all around. We've been doing a lot of good work, building a lot of good networks, and incredibly thankful for the people that have already been supporting us. We'll be getting a fundraiser soon and pass information along to Calc on that. But what I'd really like to talk about today is the role of persuasion in our work, and the role that really goes back to Dr. King, who was without a doubt, one of the finest orators that this country and this modern era has seen. And I've tried to put out some words why I believe that we, and in particular those of us who have access and are savvy and are incredibly more savvy. I mean, I look at people who are 12 years old using a smartphone far more eloquently than I will ever be able to. Access to information that's new. And so I've been putting things around that. The minds and the bodies of our youth are under increasing assault from commercial forces and a criminalization system bent on filling its coffers through prison labor. This is part of a trend towards a nationwide gulag that is occupying American soil. 150 years after the abolition of slavery, and less than 50 years after the passage of the Civil Rights Act, Hispanic and African Americans make up the vast majority of the prison system, but youth and women are increasingly finding themselves behind bars. Police officers now regularly patrol school hallways, and just today I read a story of a border guard, both in airports and between states, that were harassing a woman because of carrying condoms and sexy lingerie. Meanwhile, here in Eugene, our so-called progressive leaders pass and support legislation like the Downtown Public Safety Zone, which continues to exclude the homeless through measures that are frankly explicitly fascist and police states. Meanwhile, we continually treat and teach our youth that austerity and brutality is security, and invasion of privacy is safety. The education system has become a massive training ground for corporate job programs. Student debt forces the poor youth to seek mind-numbing employment, while banks accused of manipulating global markets and are given federal subsidies. Our knowledge is compartmentalized in homework assignments and end-of-term finals. And if you fall between the cracks, poverty and the police will be waiting for you. So why persuasion? Why art, oratory, words? Why not guns or bombs? Because the point is not to make mere political gains, but to change how we relate to one another. Not as Americans, but as humans who are emerging from the darkest of nights, from the organization of torment of people by people. To relieve ourselves of this, we must learn to appeal to one another and provoke one another, to appeal to our better sides, to higher thoughts, and to provoke the smoldering anger, an anger rooted in the truthful knowledge that this regime is wrong. This is how we advocate for one another, by calling upon both compassion and assertion. We are emerging from a consumer culture that wants us to, quote, think positive, to stay in the now and the here, to remain slaves to the dull tyranny of the everyday. This tyranny is violent in its stupidity, attacking the brains of infants with marketing schemes. It is against this violence that we invoke a no, a negation. We become critics of the everyday and become militants for the future. A militant isn't a soldier for a cause. A militant is that person who knows when to use her yes and her no, to embrace both. To militate, imagine the iron filings on a piece of paper above a magnet forming around that magnetic field, organizing into a coherent pattern. So now we continue the tradition of nonviolent militancy by standing up and saying no to the slave logic which is being peddled in schools as education. We say no to the prisons that do not reform, but instead sink organized crime into the social body like the hot brands used by ranchers on cattle. We say no to the commercialization of our desire, converting our longings into profit margins. We say no to a systemic impoverishment which uses economic violence to leave the bottom rank starving. And we say no to all those ideologies which would have us affirm this madness. Instead, we say yes to the emerging pattern of that magnetic field, the collective intelligence which is guiding our hands on keyboards, on touch screens, and in the gardens of and soil with our shovels and our rakes. We say yes to cities that feed and shelter their residents, and we say yes to nations that uplift the poor, both within and without their borders. And we say yes to a culture that liberates through education, that uses the vast resources of computerization to put the future in the hands of youth. And we say we can no longer rely on those absolutes that come from the state, from the corporation, but instead we reach back to what MLK taught us. To embrace civil rights, we need to move towards a civil society. And by moving towards a civil society, we all must become civil servants. No more paid bureaucrats who specialize, but every single one of us embracing this. No more paid teachers who focus on a particular subject, but each one of us educating one another. And by all means, no more police and prison guards and soldiers who keep organized violence in their own hands, but each one of us protecting one another, uplifting one another, and above all, holding each other accountable when we step out of line. It is not for people in uniforms to be doing this. It is the bravery of each one of us to look the other in the eye when they are acting fools, when they are acting violent thugs, and to say, stop. Not please, not would you, not can we talk about this, but stop. We have to embrace both our yeses and our nos and guide them towards the future. Thank you.